We are rolling with the transfer portal right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. You have locked it in on our recruiting channel. Please like the video and subscribe right here. We got Leanne Herring and her vast knowledge of the recruiting landscape across college football. And of course, we've got our eyes on the transfer portal. We will also talk high school football recruiting. Leanne, let's get right to it in Oxford. And of course, Lane Kiffin is gearing up for 2025. He has pulled in a quarterback from Louisville, also addressed the backfield at the running back position.
Yes, indeed. There's been a lot of question about, we all know what Lane Kiffin's title is, the Portal King, rising up the ranks. I believe they're up to number 2, the Ole Miss Rebels, and Lane Kiffin definitely making moves in silence down in Oxford. A big past couple of days for the Ole Miss Rebels. Of course, two of the biggest questions and concerns that we've talked about, over at our Ole Miss live show, and what we've been hearing from the Ole Miss fan base was Lane Kiffin and his staff going to be able to utilize the portal and build that running back room, that signature running back room, obviously, with Ulysses Bentley going off to the draft and some of their other key guys moving on. And also the biggest question, were they going to be able to find their quarterback mark that was going to be able to sit between the obvious starter in Austin Simmons and obviously highly recruited AJ Maddox? And the question is, yes, they were able to do it this weekend. First of all, let's hit with that quarterback situation. Pierce Clarkson, a top 4-star recruit coming out of St. John Bosco in Bellflower, California. He has been 2 seasons with Louisville, not really seeing a lot of time. You might know the name because his father is a well-renowned quarterback coach, Steve Clarkson. So after spending some time in season in the Ville, obviously the Cards have signed Miller Moss from USC, so it left an open door for Clarkson, obviously, to test the waters, and it looks like he's going to be heading to Oxford and the SEC. To compete against Simmons and Maddox as the next QB for the Rebels.
Excellent. And also, it's good to get some experience. So you addressed the situation with Clarkson, and he's only thrown 5 passes at Louisville. So Lane Kiffin certainly has a developmental situation on his hands there. But with the Michigan State running back coming in, Jordan Simmons, a wealth of experience in the Big Ten earlier. Last stop was in the MAC.
Yeah, like I said, this is guy you probably watch a little bit more film on, but definitely going to bring experience and depth. Of course, that's been another question that Lane Kiffin and Kevin Smith, the running backs coach of Ole Miss, have definitely addressed this season, trying to continue to build that run game. Of course, the running back room for the Rebels has been a signature and a vital part of some of the explosiveness that we've seen Lane Kiffin built over his tenure, and they wanted to continue that. Obviously, you see the numbers. He's very productive and will bring a lot of depth. Obviously, they added former Mizzou transfer Keywan Lacey earlier this year, and of course, they will have Shakai Mills-Knight, who we just saw a lot of out this weekend. Having a great time at the Navy All-American Bowl, really physical. So that the running back room is definitely something that's going to be alive and well in Oxford. And just when we thought we were done, we saw the commitment this past weekend of Jordan Simmons. They were able to add the number 1 JUCO player out of Mississippi Gulf Coast College in Trey Hall. And he's going to make an instant impact, I really believe, in Oxford. He really feels like it's home. Like I said, he's a Vicksburg native, a kid that I've watched for a while. Has a really humble story, but just watching his film, some of the things that catch out for me, obviously, you know how I feel about the running back. They're not always given enough credit, but definitely a vital part of the run game, and we've definitely seen how much the best running backs have gone in the portal this season. He has a little bit of a smaller frame for a running back, but like I said, don't let that fool you. It's definitely deceiving. He's extremely shifty. He's got quick burst. He's really hard to square up on Mark when you watch his film. He runs laterally, so I think that this is going to be really, like I said, difficult for an opposing defense that's going up against him to square up on. He also can catch passes out of the backfield exceptionally well. And like I said, he's just an all-around playmaker that I think he's going to round out this running back room with his commitment. And like I said, his experience at the JUCO level, obviously making all sorts of records and setting all sorts of records while he was at, Mississippi Gulf Coast College and earning All-American awards. So again, I think that Lane Kiffin in true Lane Kiffin fashion, making moves in silence down in Oxford, definitely addressing the needs of their next quarterback in Pierce Clarkson, heading to Oxford, and obviously with the addition of not one but two very well experienced and I think will be instant impact players in Jordan Simmons and Trey Hall in Oxford.
You can follow Leanne at Leanne Herring RW right there on X, and you will find a ton of information, work, and also video coming in from the Alamo Dome over the past week and the Navy All-American game, where Leanne covered that event for the 5th or 6th time. So check out that on Leanne's X account. And Leanne, I see that we've got more moving pieces from the SEC, where Arkansas doesn't lose a starting offensive lineman, but a guy that's played quite a bit and been a fill-in starter at times.
Yeah, the storyline that we've talked a lot about is in, linemen that have either been plagued by injury or have been with the program, numerous even seasons, but you said have kind of played more in a fill-in role versus a starting role. And offensive lineman Tykees Crawford is one of those guys. He was initially committed to UCLA, so it looked like he was going to head out west. But Rich Rodriguez, since he's taken the reins and returning home back to West Virginia, it looks like Crawford will be preferring those country roads and taking him home to be a Mountaineer, and he's going to be joining Rich Rodriguez as his next new offensive lineman from the portal. He spent obviously it brings a lot of experience from Fayetteville after 4 seasons. He saw 33 appearances, had 6 starts, but like you said, he only saw action in 1 game this past season. And prior to his stop in Fayetteville, he spent a short amount of time in Charlotte. So definitely has been a staple as far as a fill-in role on the offensive line. So it looks like Rich Rodriguez is going to bring him on to try to fill the void and the gaps as as he takes over down in West Virginia. But again, I think that Tykees Crawford, like many of the offensive linemen, bring a lot of experience, but really looking to find their home and their place where they can be a starter and an instant impact player.
The connections between Texas A&M and LSU go way, way back because they're only separated by, you would know better than I, but just a couple hundred miles down there in the Southeast. And of course, rivals in the SEC Western Division for a long time. The SEC matched them up a number of times as the final game of the season, Texas A&M and LSU. A lot of players going back and forth between those two schools. Max Johnson, one of the recent starting quarterbacks for both of those schools. And here we have another one in Donovan Green, both Texas A&M and LSU connections here.
Yes, Donovan Green, of course, a tight end that I've watched for a very long time. His partner in crime, Noah Thomas, also an Aggie, did not find his way to LSU, but like we talked about, he did make his way to Georgia. Texas A&M, and we'll be talking about it on our next show, has really done a successful job in this last weekend. They've had a huge weekend down in College Station, Mark, hosting a lot of elite recruits and also big wins on the transfer portal. So despite the exiting of a tight end in Donovan Green, who will be joining Brian Kelly down in Baton Rouge as a Bayou Bengal. Again, Donovan Green is one of those players, elite 4-star tight end coming out, brings a lot of size, but unfortunately, due to injury, he hasn't really had his opportunity to really shine and burst like what we know. But I definitely know that the Bayou Bengals won big here on the recruiting trail. He did, like I said, spent most of the 2023 season out due to injury. But in 2022 is really when he had his big season. He caught 22 passes for 223 yards and 2 touchdowns. And ironically, like I said, things always come full circle, especially in recruiting. Where he got those stats, his biggest stats was when he played a really vital role. He was an instant impact player in that Aggie win over the Bayou Bengals, 38-23. He caught 2 passes for 13 yards and 2 tutties, as they're now calling it. You don't say touchdowns anymore, Mark. You say tutties. So I had to remember to say that in this one. So again, ironic things have come full circle. Donovan Green, a highly touted tight end, looking to finally get over the hump, and he's leaving College Station, but not moving too far in the SEC to join Brian Kelly and hoping to make an impact on the opposite side of the ball when Texas A&M goes head-to-head at LSU in 2025.
Yeah, tutties. I don't say tutties. I guess this will be the show that I say it for the first time. We'll go with that.
Me
Okay.
either. I heard it a lot this weekend at the Navy All-American Bowl. So, my boys, like I always say, the recruits are all, and even the non-Ole Miss ones, but the ones, like I said, that I've had the pleasure of watching all season, they keep me up with the lingo on all the latest lingo. They also are really good at keeping me with all the latest, we call them the hype mixes of, always saying, they'll call me mom or, Miss Leanne and say, hey, we got a new song for that hype playlist. So yeah, it's always interesting. But again, like I said, it's great to see a player like Donovan Green, who unfortunately coming out of high school, was a star player, really looking to make College Station his home. But like I said, not moving too far east and to the SEC, and still looking that maybe he'll be on the opposite side when LSU plays A&M in the future, and hopefully get a couple more touchdowns. But again, he's going to be a big time playmaker now that he's healthy. I really believe so. So it was no surprise that Brian Kelly went for him and has brought him on, down to Baton Rouge.
Okay, Leanne, you catch up with the latest lingo. You pass it on to us, and then I'll decide if I'm actually going to use it myself. I can't promise anything. Maybe a few things here and there. We'll see. All right. Here's a guy that we have been talking about on our portal update show, a guy that's been a highly coveted corner coming out of Washington.
Washington, Thaddeus Dixon. Like I said, this is another a tale. The corners have been really popular stories. Similar, like I said, when we brought up, other highly touted corner, Tacario Davis. Was he going to leave Arizona? Obviously, after his second time in the portal, he decided to go. Now, could Thaddeus Dixon be in the same? He's coming off of a visit off Ole Miss. From what we're hearing this past weekend, everything was going good. Everything's been going great. He was scheduled actually to be in Michigan, in Ann Arbor this weekend as well. We haven't heard from our Michigan sources. TJ might have a closer source than I, but we don't know if Thaddeus Dixon did make it to Ann Arbor. We do know that the Wolverines did gain a commitment this past weekend from former Louisiana Lafayette corner in Caleb Anderson. So of course we know in these type of situations they really are moment to moment kind of thing. So again, we haven't confirmed that Dixon indeed ever made it to Ann Arbor. And if in fact he didn't, it could very well be because they did receive a corner commitment from, Louisiana Lafayette corner Caleb Anderson. So this is a story we'll be watching closely. Now, we've also heard in the rumblings, Mark, that Thaddeus Dixon may do similar to what Tacario Davis did in his first initial time to the portal. He might stay at Washington. And again, Washington would indeed love that to happen, because talk about not having one but two of the top transfer corners on your defense. That I don't think that would be a bad problem to have, definitely with the ties. But we'll definitely be looking to watch that. But again, Ole Miss is looking to build their defense. We know what Pete Golding and his staff, have built in that signature defense. They're looking to keep that momentum on. They definitely would love the addition of Thaddeus Dixon. Like I said, hearing the visit went well. We haven't confirmed if he did indeed make it to Ann Arbor, but again, if Dixon didn't make it to Ann Arbor, now it's kind of, will Ole Miss be able to push hard enough to be able to keep him and make him a Rebel, or will he return to Washington to possibly join Tacario Davis and being the top two corners in the transfer portal? So that's definitely a storyline we will be watching.
Checking out the work of Caleb Anderson at Louisiana Lafayette, and it might surprise some people, him elevating as a group of five player. And usually we see the best of the group of five players, the guys that are all conference, elevate and find themselves in a Power Five conference. But for Caleb Anderson, it's kind of surprising to see he hasn't been a huge contributor. The tackle totals are fairly low. Obviously, he's playing cornerback, and if they stay away from him, with him having a bigger reputation in the past game, sometimes those cornerbacks get thrown away from, and that could be the situation with Anderson. But obviously, Michigan sees something in him, and considering the way their secondaries played in recent years, they know what they're doing. So Caleb Anderson to Michigan. Kayleigh, we're going to the offensive line, your favorite spot, and a guy that we've talked about for the last couple of weeks that is one of the most sought after offensive linemen on the board, who might soon be off the board.
Yes, Emmanuel Pregnon, obviously U.S. former offensive lineman at USC. We had talked about again, Ole Miss is definitely on the mind. We thought that Ole Miss and definitely he's a Colorado native. That Colorado and Ole Miss would kind of be the early teams, but it looks again that it's not the case. Two teams that we've talked about that look to have the edge in this one. Pregnon was in Austin this past weekend talking with the Longhorns. We've heard that that visit really went well. But again, Oregon seems to be the heavy favorite in this one. So we're hearing that he's maybe close to a decision, like I said. But again, Tennessee is one of those other teams that also in the mix that he's also made a, you know, has taken initiative to kind of go for his services again. So it looks like it's down to Texas, Oregon, and Tennessee. I think from all the ones that we looked at, obviously Tennessee seems to have the good pitch as far as making him an instant impact and filling the immediate void for their interior offensive line. So I get right now when we're talking about the ability to play, obviously I think at any of those schools, especially at Oregon, they've definitely pitched him that he's going to be an instant impact player. But what makes most sense, Mark, in this situation is where Tennessee is looking to build that interior line, and his services definitely would be welcome. So that could be something that Tennessee's using as kind of an edge over Oregon and Texas. But again, he's fresh off a visit with the Longhorns and Steve Sarkisian, obviously. Not the way they intended that last playoff game to go. They thought they'd be playing for a natty, but unfortunately, but again, there's still a lot to sell down in Austin with Steve Sarkisian. So definitely, we're hearing that it could come as early as this evening, but maybe in the next couple days. So that's definitely another recruitment that we'll be watching. Again, it looks like Tennessee, Texas, and Oregon are vying for a very highly touted offensive lineman in Emmanuel. Like I said, he fills an immediate void. He's only saw 13 starts this season, allowing 0 sacks at left guard and 14 quarterback pressures. He was also at Miami. I mean, not Miami, at Wyoming. We're going to talk about Miami next, so they're on my mind. He was a number 3 guard in the Mountain West, and also made freshman All-American. Again, while he's been one of those players that we've talked about, hasn't really had a lot of time in the mix. Every time that he's been at the mix at both Wyoming along with his time at USC, he's always been one of those guys that's made an impact. And by making an impact at both schools, one of his notorious stats, I believe, is that he's had 0 sacks. So that says a lot, especially when you're playing the tackle. Like I said, doesn't matter what great quarterback you have if you don't have a strong tackle. And I think that's what makes a gentleman like Emmanuel Pregnon so much of an asset with teams like Oregon, Tennessee, and Texas. But for me, what makes the most sense, even though Oregon has the push, is Tennessee, because again, they're really looking to shape that interior offensive lineman. And Emmanuel Pregnon, from what we see and what we've seen in his past 2 stops, would be ideal to be a Vol. But again, Oregon looks like they have the edge in this one.